Welcome everybody to this new lecture from the Fabrica Creative Labs. My name is Angela Quintavalle and I'm speaking to you from Fabrica, a communication research center based in Italy, which was founded in 1994 by the Italian entrepreneur Luciano Benetton. For more than 25 years, Fabrica has been hosting creative talents under 25 from all over the world, offering them an art residency during which they develop communication projects in fields like design, graphic design, video, photography, publishing, music, and digital. Today, I'm very happy to introduce you our guests, Sasha Huber and Petri Saarikko, a visual artist duo living and working in Helsinki, but who actually met at Fabrica in this place in 2000. Sasha and Patrick work both individually and as a duo, and have been attending really many art residencies all over the world. In 2011, they opened an independent art space in Helsinki called Kallio Kunsthalle, which has been hosting more than 60 curated exhibitions. Today, among other projects, they will tell us about Remedies Universe, a project about traditional folk remedies which has taken the form of exhibitions, videos, installations, and performances all over Europe, in the Americas, and in Australasia. So I don't take any more time, and I leave them the stage. If you have any questions for Sasha and Petri, you can use the Q&A section of this Zoom. Hello, guys. How are you?
Hello.
Hey, nice to see you. Buongiorno.
Nice to be here in Italy once again, kind of. Yeah, we're really glad to join your Creative Lab series from Helsinki. And before we start sharing, we will introduce ourselves first. So maybe if I start. So my background is in graphic design, and I'm from Zurich, which I studied graphic design in Zurich, in Switzerland. And I was told about Fabrica, and I felt, okay, this is a place I would really be interested to go to because I wanted to be in an international setting. And so luckily it worked out in 2000, and I joined the graphic design department and immediately met friends around the world. Yeah, so that's where we met, and you were...
Yeah, so my name is Petri Saarikko. I'm also designer by background, nowadays an artist. I studied here in Helsinki at the University of Art and Design, nowadays known as Aalto University. I studied new media, so I landed for a trial period in Fabrica. Was it 1999 autumn? I spent a couple of weeks, and then on the following autumn, I came to Fabrica to work at the new media department, which is just establishing that time.
Yeah, and after this year, I moved to Finland, to Helsinki, and I started there my master's studies, also still in graphic design, visual culture. And there I started to make my first art projects, and eventually I transitioned to become a full-time artist. And I'm also a researcher, and I study also I make a PhD, which I started in Finland, and now I continue in Zurich and exhibit internationally, individually, but also together. And now we will tell you something that brought us also together in Fabrica still. Now we'll start to share the screen. So the beginning. So this is an old picture. We thought it would be interesting for you to see how we looked like 20 years ago. It was a time where we came together in Fabrica, and I made these portraits of lots of Fabrica friends with whom we still have contact, some of them. And I thought it would be nice to share them in case some of you are now here listening. And at this moment, I would also like to remember Takuya, who is at the bottom, who unfortunately passed away. So also in memory of him. And now, Petri, could you tell us about United People Project?
Yes, so United People project was something that maybe even started before coming to Fabrica, because it was of course a mutual idea, but I had background in new media, so was always thinking how could Benetton be visible in the digital world. So we wanted to create this kind of a pre-social network service on top of existing Benetton infrastructure. It was just before mobile phones or anything really social web. There was no Facebook, there was no YouTube. So we were very much kind of thinking how to make this visible, this digital domain. Mm-hmm. And we created a prototype of it, just pretty much working directly with Fabrica and with Benetton Corporation. So the idea was really to implement kind of video kiosks in the existing store infrastructure, where people go to make their own identity and then share media around the world multiculturally, you know. So it was really always our idea to really think Benetton as a kind of a connecting platform for people. And we still think it could be, and it still is like that. Of course, there was meanwhile connecting people, and now we are kind of reconnecting people because of this corona epidemic, and we hope that we could come up with new ways of bringing people together with our art. But really working there with you guys was the beginning point of our career. It influenced a lot of our thinking later on.
And what you see now in the background is the video of the concept that we made together with Franziska Retter, who was in the graphic design department, and Paolo Romauch, who was in the film department, to share Massimo Vignelli and also Luciano Benetton to introduce the project. And looking back at this, it's quite interesting because, you know, now social media is totally normal for us. And at that time, mobile phones didn't have any camera. So it's kind of ahead of its time, one would say. And we just thought in this context, it could be quite nice to show you a bit of this presentation that we made in actually Italian and in English as well.
In that room where Angela is now sitting, actually.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe we continue now. So maybe you could say something about.
Yes. So the Remedies Universe is a project that we started as a project to work together. We had our individual things, but somehow bringing together our strengths in community art and community projects was something that we thought would be nice to do in places, because we ended up having friends in 30 countries around the world after Fabrica. So we always thought when we travel somewhere, it would be nice to make a project with people there wherever you go. So we ended up connecting people in Brazil and many other countries where people welcomed us based on our existing network. So Remedy is really born from kind of the need of reconnecting with people and with our own old friends, but also with ourselves. So we thought this family remedy is this kind of knowledge that is not spoken. It's quite often relates to traditions, but quite often it also relates to survival mechanisms, like how do we heal ourselves? The Remedies is a kind of an open idea in that sense, that we have existing medicine that is now very much in question in this time. And then we have these natural healing techniques, and we have huge diversity of things in between that we use to heal ourselves. And we started this project you see in Sweden. So we went to a local ethnic community with 5 different nationalities and cultural backgrounds and gathered their remedies, which we performed ourselves. So this is a kind of the early old projects we started on that topic. But we still think that these kind of themes are interesting because we do this actually every day, and we don't need any internet for this actually, because we know how to do it anyways. Whether it's interesting or not, we still do it. So these are the things that we kind of,
Yeah, and it also sprung from being shared remedies from our own family. The remedy that you saw before with the wart was given to us by my grandfather from Haiti. And we were just really quite fascinated about this possibility and to kind of start this archive, because it's also knowledge that is possibly lost because it's oftentimes shared by the elders of each family. And what we found out is also that quite many remedies are quite similar, even they are from very many different places. And so that was kind of got a sense of connectedness. And it has been also, as we've been told by people seeing our work, that it inspires them to ask questions to their grandmother or grandfather and so on, because yeah, this is somehow, especially now, really kind of important knowledge to be, you know, somehow documented and shared. So this was the first one we did in 2011, and now we moved to New Zealand, to Wellington, where we were for half a year in 2015. After I was at the Sydney Biennial in 2014, we got to know really nice artists and curators, and they invited us to come over for half a year. And that allowed us really to get to know the community very well. And we decided to make the Remedies project collaboratively. So everybody who you see contributed with their own remedy, which then was translated into movement and to song. So we collaborated with the
so we
choreographer.
collaborated with the choreographer Tessa Hall and the musician Michelle Scullion. Michelle Scullion is interesting. She brought a really interesting flavor for this very cheesy music in the background. As she made the first soundtrack and music for the Peter Jackson's Bad Taste. So we kind of wanted to bring this really arcane, you know, embarrassment into this thing. So
and she wanted to also participate in the action itself.
So we made this kind of a video and also publication about this project. It was just something fun to do.
And also in relation with the Maori healing techniques.
Yeah.
But now we continue.
Then we continued from New Zealand to Australia, where we worked with the Aboriginal community, but also with the local newcomers. And this is at the occasion of the Mildura Biennale, which is an art biennale that the theme was remapping the end of the world. So the idea was really work with the landscape and people. And since the project was very interesting because they didn't want to actually make any artworks, they wanted to just use it very experiential approach. So all the artists traveled 1 month around the world. They went to Osaka in Japan, in these temple walks. They went to
Italy, the rock engravings.
Rock engravings in Italy, and also in Australia they walked these routes. Yeah. So we ended up making a video there about eucalyptus tree, because the remedy is the basically eucalyptus oil, the tree, a living phenomena. So we walked and talked with Aboriginals and created this story about narratives around the tree and the eucalyptus oil.
Yeah, and also the importance of the tree itself being a marking to the tribal lands. And unfortunately, the colonizers cut those trees off. And yeah, it was the first time for us to work in Australia.
Yeah, the middle
and
of the...
This then continued as well. Should we continue? We just thought to show in the background this.
Yeah, this is the film, and the installation then came out.
On the land to get the didgeridoos.
In 2016, we went to Haiti. My mother is from Haiti and immigrated to the States in the 60s, and we still have family living over there. And in the 1944, my grandfather was one of the co-founders of the Centre d'Art, the art school. And in 2016, we were invited to go there and make 2 projects during 1 month, was it?
Yeah, we made one about the massacre called Perehil, another one with remedies called Remde. And there we as well wanted to connect with the local idea of healing, the cultural healing, let's say. So we work with the Sasha's half heritage of the voodoo culture, and relating to that, we invited and we worked with the local musicians and dancers and artists and comedians, which is very interesting in Haiti as well. So we devised these personal remedies into kind of a unified performance, where we mixed the audience and the performers together. So you no longer knew who's the performer and who's the audience in it.
Which you see now here in this circle. Yeah. And at the beginning, one participant collected the different burdens of people, and then some of them were then treated, and they were also invented remedies as well. So the video helps us to be able to share with this, but the actual performance was the real happening in that sense. So that's why I also have it black and white. So it's like a documentation of the live performance. And yeah, we hope to return to Haiti soon. It's the political situation.
Yeah, I was supposed to go there now, but now there's been quite unrest again. So
yeah,
hope to return to.
Now we go to the next. It's a world tour.
And then we continued to Tasmania. We were invited actually from while being in Sasha was in the Sydney Biennale. We met a curator there, Jonathan Kimberley, who became quite important and close friend for us. And then he invited us to work in the local community there. I made a project there with bioluminescence, with this kind of a glowing suits first. And then a year later, he invited us to work on this Glenorchy Art and Sculpture Park called GASP, which is crossed to this from this MONA, this Museum of New and Old Art. It's a very interesting museum there right next to this place. Mm-hmm. So we made a project with the local people again. There's a huge wave of immigration coming to Tasmania from many countries, refugees arriving weekly. And Jonathan was very interested in involving us, making visible that movement of people, explaining people's stories, their how they survived, how they managed to root themselves. So we spent one month there meeting all possible members of the community, nearly a few hundred people, to create a kind of a film of their testimonials and their lives, how they survive into Tasmania today.
And now we show you a short clip with the sound.
Yeah, there's no trailer.
Aga bugi alai mondana boshi sari qarmuguya jurbashi birar hai sari qarmuguya jurbashi birar شانده دمی تا نیستم و خورا پیچ سیایی یار سکتم و خورا ای های پیچ سیایی یار سکتم و خورا.
Exactly.
So this was a one-time film screening in Glenorchy.
As part of the Readers and Writers Festival.
In Tasmania, and there were as well people coming from Oceania area and Australia and New Zealand.
And during this time, we also got to work with children, and then Petri developed the project about lullabies. And maybe
we talk about it a bit later. So Lullabies is a project that's also a remedy. So this is a project version of the remedies we made in Mörbulonga in Öland, where refugee children and local children mixed together. The idea was that we created kind of a moving project where we create songs with children to put their parents to sleep. That was really the main idea of it. And later on, actually last year or 2019, I was spending quite a long time in Astrid Lindgren's foundation. Astrid Lindgren is one of the world's most known children writer, and I work in that community to make a song for connecting kind of Astrid's children's book imagination with the real situation of the people there. So these songs are often kind of lullaby songs where we compose the music together with children, with the musicians, and then record it and leave it kind of as an archive to the community. So we don't really distribute these things publicly.
Exactly, and then you made this also in Tasmania with the.
Yeah, this has been made in Russia and also in Finland on a small island, and in Tasmania and Sweden twice actually. So.
Mm-hmm. And 2018, we were invited to join the first Riga Biennial, and for this we decided to make a publication in collaboration with local researchers, also Pirt's master. Can you say what that is?
Pirt is kind of a steam hot room. You know, many cultures, native cultures have this idea of steam room. In Finland, one of the oldest habitations that is discovered here in the north actually is called sauna, and sauna is this sweat lodge that American First Nation people in that continent lived and cleansed themselves. So it has a kind of a ritualistic and holistic connection to our bodies. And in Finland, the sauna, here you see an image of Pirts in Latvia. We often meet there. People are naked, we talk there. It's quite silent. It's very interesting experience. So in Riga, we wanted to connect this kind of a culture that is very, very grounded to us. Not in a nostalgic way, but really kind of in a realistic way, maybe more, and look it as a kind of a performative practice. To think what kind of value it can give to us in this time.
And within the whole process, we gathered lots of remedies and spells as well. And this is one remedy which is quite useful. We are very much on screen, and so this remedy tells you that you could cut a potato in half and put it on your closed eyes and just lay down with these potatoes on your eyes, and this is rejuvenating your eyes. So you could try that out. And during the biennial, we had women participating, making remedies to the audience of the biennial, and who went around and started to share those remedies, because it's about oral knowledge that is transmitted orally
and through actions, actually. So
yeah,
so it's kind of embodied knowledge that we can share, and it's nothing complicated. It's really simple. Just have to do it if you want to do it.
Yeah.
So.
In 2019, we were invited to Staten Island, to Newhouse Center for Contemporary Art residency. And there we were already 2017 as part of another exhibition that we were invited to, where we developed work that we not showed today. But what we learned then is that the Underground Railroad passed through Staten Island as well. And the Underground Railroad was a network of people and places. People were abolitionists that helped the enslaved people in the South to freedom. And those slaves who made their ways into freedom really risked their lives. They had to run usually during the night, and in the daytime they could stay at those people's homes hidden for the day to pass. And we got to hear about this, and we felt we would like to come back and look at this more and see the Underground Railroad as a means of being a remedy for freedom. So that was then the case in 2019. We got to know Debian Page, who is a historian from Staten Island and who knew a lot about the Underground Railroad. And one of the known abolitionists is Harriet Tubman, that you maybe have heard of, who's supposed to come to the $20 bill soon. I hope it happens, as one of the examples. But we could hear about other abolitionists who did live on Staten Island. And on this banner, now this is not a film, but this is like a portable monument, for instance. We wanted to have the timeline, historical timeline that relates to slave history on Staten Island. And we made it up to the date where we were there, because somehow the history is carrying on, and even now we know that it's all connected to the past, and it repeats itself.
Yeah, we have to also remember that new forms of slavery do exist, and by highlighting the past issues is a way to come to realize the present. So nowadays these things occur in a totally another level, and it's more related to economic extraction of value of people's social and cognitive abilities, to say nowadays. So it's very important to have this groundwork to be done to understand really well today's forms.
Mm-hmm. And when you look on the right side, 2019, when we did the work, it was the inauguration of this was really on the day when the dreaded raids on immigrants started. And we end up coming up with the question is, do we need a new kind of Underground Railroad as well? And now to just say something what we do at the moment in relation to remedies. We arrived in Helsinki and we are work in progress at the moment. Maybe Petri, you could say something.
Yeah, this is a you saw earlier the video clip maybe from the work that we made in Mildura, Australia. So there we created these clay sculptures which are actually created by feet. It's a kind of a Euclidean object, very clean spheric object that people start to kick with their feet. And Helsinki city wanted to actually approach Sasha first to make an artwork, and then she said, okay, let's try to make this together. And they wanted to create a park basically, or
artworks for the park.
Yeah. They wanted to uplift the existing park, and we already had done this project 2015 in Australia in a school for autistic children, but also this particular clay project, and also with the local community. So we thought it's interesting to maybe think this is as a kind of a silent artwork on the background of a regular park where it's actually nothing else than nature, and maybe these little sculptures. And it's very interesting to work these sculptures. We created 3 of them already. Now they are going to be casted in bronze, and people were really asking, like, are they still going to be here in 300 years? And this actually brings me to one of the early workshops that were in Fabrica. I think we were working that time World Wildlife Federation, and that must have been 1999 or 2000, and they were discussing that time the footprint. So the footprint was a kind of a metaphor for our relation to the landscape and natural resources. And we just thought, okay, let's think, what could this be? And instead of creating sculptures with hands, which creates totally predictable more predictable results, by offering people possibility to shape the earth with feet, and then casting in the bronze where you can actually render singular toe prints. So we kind of start to think from fingerprints to toe prints, people's mark left in the earth. So this is the latest version of the remedies we're working on here, and it's
first permanent work. This will be
in Finland, so it's nice.
Exactly. So now resets.
Okay, now I give the floor to Sasha and I disappear. So
Petri wants to disappear for a moment. You can stay.
No, I will go. I'll come if you ask, but I come back in Q&A. So good luck, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, so resets is kind of brings together the work that I've been doing since 2007 or 8 to be precise. And it all started after reading this book about Swiss involvement in slavery and slave trade, written by Hans Fassler, who's a historian and activist. And it was at the time the second book about this topic, everything that we didn't learn at school. And Haiti plays a role as well in the book, and it's really travels throughout whole Switzerland. And it just kind of made me contact Hans, and he was okay to meet me. And that's how he's then after that started to involve me or tell me as well what he's doing otherwise. And in 2007, he founded the Demounting Louis Agassiz campaign, which was about Louis Agassiz, who was born then, there was a 200-year anniversary celebrated him. He was known especially as being one of the most known glaciologists. But what happened is that in 1846, when he immigrated to the States, or actually he was just supposed to make a lecture series, but he ended up staying there and starting a new family and everything. He saw Black people, and he became, after that, one of the most influential racists of the 19th century, using at the time new technology of photography as a means of photographing enslaved people. And in a particular moment that was in 1850 on a South Carolina plantation, he ordered to get 7 enslaved people stripped naked and photographed from all sides. So the idea was to use these photographs as a way of proving the inferiority of the Black people. What Hans noticed is that nothing was mentioned about this part of his, let's say, work, because he suggested segregation in the States. He was forerunner of apartheid. He was just too influential and teaching people racism, what we suffer from today still, just so much that he felt it should not be left out in his history. So that's how the idea came, to suggest to rename one of the places, which is named Arcus Horn, a mountain in the Swiss Alps. And one has to think there are over 80 places named after him around the world. Then there is a place on the moon and Mars and 7 species. So he's really very represented everywhere. The idea was to highlight that lack of transparency with this renaming of the mountain. And I felt then that that should happen like in concrete ways. What was made at that time was writing letters to the mayors. The mountain is located on a border between 2 cantons and 3 communes. And this means, but I felt compelled to kind of take action. So what I did first, also I made this portrait of Arcus. That was at the time a new way of working for me, which I developed during my studies. That's I use a staple gun as a means of shooting back, and I created portraits of people that were responsible of the troubles in Haiti. So I portrayed Christopher Columbus and dictators of Haiti. So that series was called Shooting Back, Reflection on Haitian Roots. And then I decided to portray also Arcus on the same line. So it was for me like a way of taking that staple gun, which is like a weapon, to kind of defend the dead and take it further. What I could maybe still say, the only staple work I show in this presentation is that very soon I realized that I use very much energy to create images of those men, which are written down in history so much and so on. And I felt I have to stop that. So I decided to work with the same methods, but highlighting histories of peoples that have been silenced in history and who suffered from the impact of what these men have started, just to speak about this. But anyhow, the action that I mentioned before is that I decided to plan a trip to the mountain. What you have to be doing, you have to be able to climb. I couldn't climb. I learned that properly in the flat Finland. So the only way for me to getting to the mountain was through the air. So I created this new sign with the new name, with the short description, with a picture of Renty. Renty was one of the enslaved persons photographed. He was born in Congo, and also his daughter Delia was photographed. So in honor of Renty and all people suffering similar fates, this renaming happened. What I started as well was the petition website, rentihorn.ch for Switzerland, which is actually still online, even it was launched in 2008. It allowed people from around the world to give their name and also leave a message if they support this idea. What I couldn't have anticipated was that the descendant of Renty would contact me. That's exactly what happened. I also made this drawing. So Tamara Lanier, you see here, she's the great-great-great-granddaughter of Renty. She contacted me and she came to Switzerland to one of the openings, which was a kind of a exhibition in the mountain area, which was kind of a compromise because the name of the mountain was not renamed, but they invited us to have an exhibition that would tell about Arcus' racism, at least. So she came there and she could speak about Renty as a human, you know, as a person who was spiritual, who could read. Reading was completely forbidden to enslaved people. So she could kind of give him the humanity back that was taken, this objectification that was happening through this photograph. And then that was for me the first time to work with the archive. And what happened is that this whole story took a life of its own because Tamara, who was writing down her story about Renty and Delia because of her mother who told her about Renty in the first place, has filed a lawsuit against Harvard University because they own those photographs. The Peabody Museum in Harvard owned all these photographs, and they still charge fees for reproducing those images. So somehow the photograph becomes like the human. And Tamara is with this suit, which is a freedom suit, wants to free her ancestors of being still owned by the institution. So this is an ongoing law suit, and what you see here is her attorney, Benjamin Crump, who is introducing the story, and the person on the right is the descendant of Agassiz. So that was a very interesting thing, because when Tamara made this lawsuit, it was in New York Times, all over the place. So the great-great-great-granddaughter of Agassiz read it and came forward and decided to not be ignorant anymore. She wasn't also really aware of the damage that happened, or because everybody was just very proud of being a descendant of Agassiz. So this was a very unique situation where she organized all like 41 Agassiz family members to write a letter, sign a letter that went to Harvard, to the Harvard director and the board as well, in support of Tamara's wish to get those photographs. And so Petri was then in Boston and filmed the whole situation as part of also for documenting for Tamara. We are in close contact. And the picture you saw before was like a way of bringing the archive and the Tamara together, her ancestor and her together, because also she was refused the copyright of the image as well. So it has gotten really further. But then to continue, at the time in 2008, when I made the Anaks Horn project, it continued for me. I heard of his travels to Brazil in 1865-66. He led an expedition over there. And that was one of his works there was to make more photographs of enslaved people in Rio de Janeiro and also in Manaus. And I got to know the history professor Maria Helena Machado from the Sao Paulo University. And she invited me to, she knew also from the Anaks Horn initiative and had also signed the petition and so on. But then she invited me to respond to that archive. And I decided to do that in a way of not reproducing the images, because I feel the violence that has been made to the people who had to, you know, strip naked, and they couldn't choose, and they probably wouldn't have even known, they wouldn't have been told what it is for, and they haven't seen the pictures either afterwards. I decided to stand in with my own like creolized body as a way of reclaiming the body, and also take that power like of discussing this on my terms and in our times. And what you see here is a series that has started in Brazil. As you on the top left, I'm standing in all pictures in front of natural features named after Agassiz. The second one is in Switzerland, in his home village, Montvully. I'm standing in front of a rock named Agassiz. Then to your right is a rock Agassiz in Scotland, Edinburgh. And then underneath, on the left side, is the Agassiz Range in the South Island of New Zealand, where there is also a glacier, which I will speak about later. And the next one is standing on a snow-frozen, ice-frozen lake, Agassiz in Quebec, Canada. And on the right is in the Bronx Park. So the waterfall was called Agassiz Falls. So this is kind of a slow growing self-portraiture series called The Mixed Traces. And in Brazil, there is also, after his 1 year, a few places were named after him. And I decided to become like a messenger from the past to arrive at this place, Praça Agassiz, in the suburbs of Rio de Janeiro, and share the story who Agassiz was and what he did in Brazil, because all the people we've talked to, we got to know, they didn't know who is actually Agassiz. So there it was not about the renaming, but more about sharing that story. And they were immediately saying, oh, we should change the place name, because also on that square there are lots of accidents happening. And so that was that process. And in 2019, I was invited to exhibit the whole body of work in Rio as well. And that was really interesting to return and meet the people again. Now I have still a few projects to show last moment. In Switzerland, I was now living away from Switzerland so long. In 2013, I was able to go for residency, which was in Frauenfeld near Zurich. And 2 years previously, Petri and me were at a celebration of my sister's friends. And then Petri noticed this man there. We didn't know who he was. But he said, look, he looks just like Louis Agassiz. And then we found out that he's an actor. But then forgot about it altogether. And then 2 years later, I was invited to his home town, Frauenfeld. And then I remembered him and I decided to contact him and ask if he would like to collaborate and perform as Agassiz. And he said yes. And then with another committee member, Hans Bart, I invited him to write a script. What would Agassiz say? You know, it's like a half-an-hour lecture. And his idea was that he would wake up from the death because we disturb him. We don't let him rest in peace. So he wakes up and he comes back and tries to incidate himself. And it kind of also links to our present time. And then it was performed live during the opening. And the audience, I really hope we will be able to sit so close one day again in a museum. And otherwise, the audience sits on this, we call it prototype. This is a work Petri and me did together, which is kind of a stylized Renti horn. So people would climb the mountain while listening to Agassiz from the top, and see the video during the exhibition time and see the rest of the exhibition. And now actually I was invited to have a exhibition tour starting in April at the Kunstinstituut Melli in Rotterdam. And this work will be reproduced over there. And then it will continue to the power plant in Toronto in 2022 in January, I hope. This is going to be then. And then in October, the exhibition continues to Autograph in London. And then it comes to Finland as well, to the Turku Art Museum. And then maybe it continues further even. The whole body of work and the exhibition is going to be, is called You Name It. And these photographs are amber types, and this connects to Fabrica in a nice way. We got to know Borut Petalin, who's a photographer who was at the same time at Fabrica. And he developed into becoming really a professional amber type photographer. And I invited him to come to Switzerland and make this portrait. So I decided to put Agassiz in front of the lens, and I even merged myself with him. So I created this kind of strange time changes, like I kind of merged the past and the present together. And it was really, really important that it's made in this particular way. And I mentioned before that, yeah, there is on the moon and on Mars a place named after Agassiz. So I decided to make a project about that. And also we are with the committee in touch with the IAU, International Astronomy Union, to suggest renaming of the, now we start with the moon, place of the moon, the Promotorium Agassiz. And I had the idea that it would be amazing to rename it after Katherine Johnson, who was one of the human computers at NASA, who passed away just a couple of days ago, a year ago. She was 101 years old, and she's an African-American mathematician and calculated the trajectories to the moon. So her history and career was amazing and very important to see how the community has achieved so much. And I really now work on, or I hope that this will happen someday. I'm in touch also with her family, tried to meet her, but she was already so old, so it was not possible to meet her in person, but the family welcomed me to do something, and I'm working at the moment on a portrait about Katherine Johnson, and the video would be called, will be called Out of This World. So this is almost the last work that I would like to show, but I would still like to show one video, a couple of minutes, which I made in New Zealand along this poster series, Arcus Down Under. It's a series of posters which were made during 3 years in 3 different exhibitions, all in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And you see the archival image of an incident that happened 1906 in San Francisco, where an earthquake dropped down Agassiz statue from the Zoological Museum, and it dropped down and was documented from all the sides. So I made these posters to be taken along, and they are in memory of incidences that happened at that time when the exhibition took place in the States. And the first one was about the 9 victims in Charleston that were shot by a white supremacist. And the other one is about the Black Lives Matter and the police brutality. And the latest was about the protests that happened in Charlestonville after the Governor Lee's statue was supposed to be taken down. Yes, and I'm not sure, is there time for the video still, Angela? Would people still like to see the video? Yeah?
Yes, yes, sure.
Okay. So this is kind of a nice ending to the lecture.
Wakatakatahu ki te uru, wakatakatahu ki te toka, kia makina kina te uta. Wakatakatahu ki te toka, kia makina kina te uta. Kia mataratara kita, e hia ke te atakura, he tia, he huka, e hauhu, ti hei Moriora. Haurua taku waka, ho raka hautu taku takatas, ho tūtoko taku moka tīpuna, ho makawhi o te awa, ho hau te toka, ho kati mahaki te hapu. Ko pautini kai tahu te iwi. I hei mauri ora. E tu ana ahau. Ke raro. I te tau maramara. O taku mauka ariki. E titi nei ki te raki. Mena mo koutou katoa. Mo whānau. Ko tiri tiri o te moana. Te tauhuhu o te waiponomu. Tukua e nei moka. Nā raki nui e tū nei. I ngā wā o mua. Mauria mai mātou. Nā korowai. O rangi māri e. Ke te horaina. Atu. Ke runga e a koutou katoa. Tukua te wairua ke ere inga taumata. Hai arahi o tātou mahi. Tā tātou whai ngā tikanga a rātou mā. Kia mau, kia ita, kia pupuri. Kia tina hui e taiki e.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for this very inspiring lecture. Great work, really. So we have a question from Mariana. She's asking, what artist residencies or programs would you recommend for multidisciplinary artists or designers that are above 25, looking for a heterogeneous exploration on mixed media?
Oh, well, there are so many residencies, but one which is really good, I think, is in Rio de Janeiro, which is a year residency called Capaceche, and it's really multidisciplinary. You could look at that, but then there is a website. What is the website? There's a website that Res Artists, yes. You go look for Res Artists, Res Artists, yes, which is a website that brings all residencies around the world together. So you can type in a location you would wish, and anything you find there, a lot of possibilities when the deadlines are.
Okay, so thank you again, guys, for attending, for participating and accepting our invitation. And thank you, the audience, for listening. Our next appointment with the Fabrica Creative Labs will be on March 17th with Gérard Samarty and Gabriele Schiavon, co-founders of La Granja, a multidisciplinary design firm based in Barcelona. Very, very interesting. If you wish to be updated about our activities, you can follow us on our social media or subscribe to our newsletter that you can find on our website, fabrica.it. So thank you again. Thank you, Sasha and Petri. And goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.